Happy Saturday, guys. What if I told you that the biggest threat for a major earthquake is not the San Andreas fault? It is not even the New Madrid fault. It is not even the Wabash Valley fault. These are all continental United States fault lines which could trip very severe earthquakes. The New Madrid one in particular was famous for creating an 8.1 Richter scale seismic thrust earthquake in the 1800s. But what if I told you that there was a fault line that tops all of those and then some? This is the story of the Cascadia Subduction Zone. The Cascadia Subduction Zone is not even on the continent. It is 100 miles off the west coast. It is a fault line that runs between Vancouver Island in Canada, which is where the city of Victoria is, down and about anywhere from 70 to 100 miles off of the west coast. From that point south to around Cape Mendocino, California. Now, what is a subduction zone? Well, in this case, there are two geological plates that collide here. The North American continental plate and what's also called the Juan de Fuca plate, which is off the shore in the Pacific Ocean. These plates have been moving towards each other for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And as it stands right now, the North American plate goes over the Juan de Fuca plate, which goes underneath it, hence the term subduction. Now, this plate goes underneath the North American plate. And in history, whenever there's a friction snaps between the two plates, it creates what is called a seismic thrust earthquake. Now, in the case of this particular fault line, it doesn't happen all that often. It happens roughly once every 350 years. The last time an earthquake happened along the Cascadia Subduction Zone was on January 26th of 1700, which means, to be frankly honest, we're very close to due to another one. The Cascadia earthquake of 1700 created an earthquake that was estimated to have measured anywhere between 8.7 and 9.2 on the Richter scale. 9.0 is generally considered to be the estimate for what a future Cascadia earthquake would result in. And you're thinking, okay, well, what kind of damage can it do if it's off the coast and the epicenter is not on the mainland? Well, I don't know if you've ever heard of these things called tsunamis. They might just be little waves. Actually, not little waves at all. The case of the Cascadia earthquake of 1700 was estimated to have produced waves or tsunamis of up to 100 feet high. And the North American plate also collapsed around 60 feet in this earthquake. Now, there are no scientific records of this earthquake. The record of that is preserved in First Nations records and legends. So there's also one other concurring bit of evidence, and it happened from Japan. And in Japan, a couple of days later, on January 28th of 1800, a tsunami hit the northern part of Honshu Island, which is the mainland island of Japan. A tsunami of dozens of feet high. No exact measurements are available. But the Japanese, of course, keep rather meticulous records of their earthquakes, even back then. And so they did the math on that one and figured, okay, yes, a tsunami can race across the entire length of the Pacific Ocean within 48 hours, which is likely what happened here. Especially when you're talking about a 9.0 Richter scale mega thrust earthquake. Also evidence on the Pacific coastline in northwestern Washington state. Studies have been done where there are numerous stumps of petrified wood underneath the ocean. These were likely from trees that were above water, or this area was likely land at the time, but because of the 60-foot drop, these became stumps that were underneath the water and hence became petrified wood over the course of the next 300 plus years. Now, what a future Cascadia earthquake would look like? Well, most of the professionals around this particular subject matter expertise are in the state of Oregon, and disaster planning within the state of Oregon does take this future event into account. Preparations are probably not where they should be, but a 9.0 to 9.2 megathrust earthquake would create another tsunami of over 100 feet high. Coastal towns along the coast of both Washington state and Oregon would be wiped out. The shaking of an earthquake of this size along this megathrust line would last somewhere around 7 minutes, which for an earthquake is an eternity. For example, the Mexico City earthquake of 1985, the shaking lasted about 4 minutes. So 7-minute earthquake is some serious crap going on here, and you would have a coast that would sink about 60 feet. The land along the coast would sink. Towns, numerous towns along the coastline would be underwater, both from this and the tsunami itself. So towns I'm thinking of like Coos Bay, Oregon, Astoria, Oregon, Aberdeen, Washington, Brookings, Oregon, way down the south coast, and even the Pelican Bay prison in Northern California could possibly be wiped out. Now, in case you were wondering if any prisoners at Pelican Bay would be able to escape from this disaster, the assumption by the state of Oregon's disaster planning scenarios are that, and I quote, everything west of Interstate 5 will be toast. So the coastal area of, say, Pelican Bay State Prison, yes, the prison would be wiped out. Yes, I'm sure the gates would be swung open, but almost nobody would survive. Wardens, prisoners, whatever. Downtown Portland and downtown Seattle, completely and utterly destroyed. These buildings are not built to design even a 7.0 earthquake, let alone a 9.0. Some improvements have been gradually made over the years, and the newer the buildings are, the more likely they are to survive, as codes have been strengthened since that point. However, anything built before, say, 1908, 1990 is not going to have much of a chance. We would have massive collapse of buildings, freeway architecture such as the I-5 viaducts in Seattle. Skyscrapers would likely collapse, which would then start fires on the scale of the San Francisco earthquake of 1906. Except on a worse scale, because the San Francisco earthquake had a Richter scale of somewhere around a little under 8.0. This would be 9.0. And if you know anything about the Richter scale, you know that a 1 point increase on the Richter scale is exponential. A 1 point increase means the intensity strengthens by 10 times. So a 9.0 earthquake is 10 times more intense than an 8.0 earthquake. And as they say in the state of Oregon with their disaster planning, everything west of Interstate 5 will be toast. Buildings would collapse, which would start catastrophic fires. And so the downtown skylines of Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, and Vancouver, British Columbia would be flattened. Viaducts and bridges would collapse. It would be a repeat of the 35W collapse here in Minnesota back in 2006, Only instead of one bridge, you'd be talking about hundreds. And instead of 13 people, you'd be talking about several hundred. The death toll from this type of an earthquake would be somewhere around 100,000 by estimates. Casualties, which would include injuries, would be close to the 1 million mark. This earthquake would put anything at the San Andreas Fault, or the Sierra Nevada Fault, or the New Madrid Fault could produce, would make those things look like the ball pit at Chuck E. Cheese. So there it is, folks. The most severe possible threat, an earthquake threats to the United States and to southwestern Canada, is not the San Andreas Fault. It is the Cascadia Subduction Zone. Sorry to scare you on a Saturday morning. Hopefully your cereal stays down. Oh, and I forgot to mention one other thing. In the minutes before this earthquake starts, one thing that you will notice, all the dogs will start barking. And here's why. Before earthquakes erupt, the faults emit radio semisonic sounds that cannot be heard by humans, but they can be heard by dogs. So if you're in the Pacific Northwest and the dogs start just barking everywhere in your neighborhood, it's time to run like hell. Oregon does not have escape zones for this earthquake event, and neither does the state of Washington. But like any other flash flood scenario, the biggest survival tip at this point would be to run like hell to the highest ground possible. There are no designated zones. There is nothing constructed that could, if a building is in the tsunami zone, it's going to be flattened. It's going to be destroyed. Those buildings have no chance. Your best hope is to get to high ground and to do it in the few minutes that you're going to have available to you to get up there. With only about 100 miles offshore, the tsunami alarms that are in place right now along the coast would give you maybe 10 minutes to get to the highest ground possible. If you're close to a hill, you're going to be pretty fortunate. You're going to be able to get up there, and you're going to probably be able to get high enough to be out of the 60 to 100 feet elevation of a tsunami. If you're not, I would just say thoughts and prayers, because you're going to need every bit of divine intervention from God possible to survive this. Okay, now I'm done. This has been What If I Told You that the biggest earthquake threat to the United States is not the San Andreas Fault, it's not the New Madrid fault line, or even the Sierra Nevada fault line. It is the Cascadia Subduction Zone. So on that point, enjoy your Saturday. Folks, have as good of a day as possible. Enjoy your weekend, folks. We'll see you next time. Peace out, homies.